really poor specimen. Yeah, this is the worst.
It's like beat up.
It's like gnarled on, a cat chewed it.
Kind of like
there's like a hair wrapped around it.
You are listening to Urban Wildlife Podcast.
Welcome to another episode of the Urban Wildlife Podcast. I'm one of your co-hosts, Billy Brown, with
Tony Crosdale.
We got two guests today from the Weeds Project. We've got
Caitlin Pomerantz
and
Zaya Levy.
If you like the podcast, please like us on your podcasting listening platform of choice, iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, whatever you're using. Please leave a review. Please get in touch with us at urbanwildlifecast@gmail.com or tweet at us at urbwildlifecast. We love feedback. We love ideas. We've more and more been including stuff that listeners have sent us. So if you've got something, whether it is an animal or if it's a plant that's in your city, wherever your city is, and you want to talk a little bit about it, send us a little recording. We'd love to put it on the podcast.
Absolutely.
Hey, podcast listeners. Tony and I took a walk with Zaya and Katie in West Philly on Chancellor Street just to see what we could find growing in the neighborhood.
All right, so my first impression of the cracks are that they're well trodden. So we've got miniature things here. It's not like no one walks here and then there's just ample opportunity. But they are resilient, so they're still here even though they're completely walked on. So we have... What do we have here, Katie?
We have epazote, which people use in food for various reasons.
I've got a bean stew in the fridge right now with sidewalk epazote.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. And so...
And one is to reduce flatulence in beans.
Hopefully it does that too.
Yeah.
You're going for the flav.
I'm going for the flavor.
Yeah.
I don't really have much hope in that.
It's got a pretty wild smell, I think.
It smells, people say like gasoline or some... You don't think you should eat it when you smell it, but the flavor really blends well with other stuff.
We also, in this tiny crack, have a little bit of nightshade or solanum. I think it's solanum something. It's been a little while. I've been living in LA.
Genus is fine. All right.
Friend of the potato, friend of the tomato, friend of the eggplant. People say that the nightshade berry is poisonous, but then a lot of people eat them too. Black nightshade. People say black nightshade is like, some people say it's totally poisonous, other people just eat handfuls of them.
Should we have a little disclaimer here? We don't advise people to eat them?
I would say people should control their own knowledge base, so whatever they truly know, then they can know it. But like, that's what I think. You can have a disclaimer.
Okay,
So
I'll have a
this is your
disclaimer
podcast.
saying don't eat something unless you absolutely know what it is.
This is, yeah.
And at least for yourself have fully evaluated the possible effects of eating it.
Right.
All right, good.
Yeah.
And in between, we've got, what do we have, like, those little guys?
Some clover.
So, really quick, the nightshade has
I think it's an oxalis.
oxalis, so that's like a miniature wood sorrel, right?
Yeah. Also edible, although it has oxalic acid in it, which if you have in high concentrations, you won't be very happy, but
it's like a kind of lemony flavor.
really nice.
Fun to chew
Yeah,
on
really
your
nice.
kid.
Yeah. And then this is some sort of like I don't know, buffalo grass or something like that in a non-native grass.
Okay, and the nightshade, how would you describe what it looks like? Since
Well, this is a really poor specimen. Yeah, this is the worst. This is like
it's like
really-
beat
It's
up,
like gnarled on,
beat
a
up
cat
green,
chewed it.
kind of like
There's like a
roundish
hair
leaves.
wrapped around it.
this is
All
like-
right, so let's walk on. We might see some prettier looking
Yeah.
specimens.
The peanut
and
butter
stuff.
plant right here.
Yeah.
Is it coming out of? It's coming out of the crack.
Yep,
Are we
have an ailanthus.
cracks only here?
I think we're cracking it.
Okay.
But this is coming. It is coming out from the crack.
Yeah, it's a cracker on a tree planting. So cool. Let's go. The hot spot's going to be next to the church parking lot, I think.
But
All right.
this is a much nicer version of the nightshade that we're looking at here. The solanum.
So deep green leaves, kind of arrow shaped with some like.
I mean, they look a
serrations.
lot like a tomato plant.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like a lot like a tomato plant. And the little flowers look a lot like the tomato plant.
So little white star-shaped
And
flowers.
what's nice about the Solanaceae family in general is that the little male parts, the anthers that make the pollen, all kind of get together in a little inner circle there, meeting up, giving it a real look, a crown-like look. So that's nice.
Neat. Okay.
Always keep
So-
an eye on your tomato plants.
Now
That
next
little lamb's quarters, baby.
we got a little lamb's quarter growing out of the crack between the asphalt and the curb.
Another edible, right? Edible,
Delicious
edible,
edible.
questionable,
And so the
edible.
yes, the lamb's quarter tastes kind of like spinach in my experience. Although
Hi,
kinda
closely
fuzzy.
related to quinoa.
The
Epazote.
epazote is another amaranth, isn't it?
I think so.
Yeah. All right, we've got a lot of epazote here,
Yeah.
which makes it really convenient for me.
Established lamb's quarters.
Yep, taller
And
lamb's
epazote.
quarters, and they've got kind of like soft-looking leaves. Mm-hmm. They got the kind of like basic arrow shape with kind of like jagged sides. I don't know.
Here's a favorite native plant,
Oh,
Phytolacca americana.
pokeweed.
Pokeweed.
Yeah, this is maybe, I haven't seen much pokeweed yet.
They got he's
berries
poking,
are
poking
just-
out in the backyard.
We
Greg's
gotta
house.
give a shout out to one of our favorite podcasts, Field Notes, where their episode about pokeweed was called.
Poke weed every day.
There you go.
That's pretty funny.
Our favorite story about pokeweed, or mine, is that the berries were used to make the ink that was used to sign the Declaration of Independence.
Aha. Okay.
Which is not a very light, fast ink.
No, so who's
And
to
which
say
is-
how
which is a very
sturdy
current-
that signature was?
A very current fact because it's now July 5th in Philadelphia.
That's probably why they have to keep that thing in the shade.
So the berries are like it gets to be a big plant, and it has these like clusters of like these purple
Fuchsia,
berries.
almost.
Deep, yeah, deep.
And one thing that's really fun is when they're ripe, you can take them and like throw them on the sidewalk and smear them around with your foot, and you can get like these almost Zen sand garden paintings out of it.
pokeweed art. Okay.
Yeah.
It is
Got a
Temporal,
project.
temporal,
it is
ephemeral.
an inspiration for speaking of art, one of the greatest songs ever written. Poke Salad Annie.
I don't know it.
It was like, everybody says it was a shame that your mama was a working on her chain gang. Poke Salad. And it's like, the gators got your granny. That's
That's poke salad.
yeah, Poke Salad Annie.
there
It starts
you
out,
go.
so there's a girl from a swamp. This plant used to grow called poke. And this girl
Oh,
was just
so
go
can you
bring a
eat
mess.
it?
Yeah, it
Oh.
eats leaves. Yeah.
I think the really young shoots have been edible, but I do believe that the full-size plant can cause lymphatic issues.
And so we got like around here with Ailanthus of various sizes. We have, and this is sometimes called Tree of Heaven. It smells kind of skunky.
Or peanut buttery.
Rotten peanut butter.
No, don't defame peanut butter like that. I love peanut
Oh,
butter.
I do too. Smells like peanut butter.
No, it's like bad peanut butter. It's like peanut butter mixed. I don't know. Okay, I'm not gonna get hung up on that. We saw a little seedling back by the tree planting over there, and then we've got one that's like 3 feet tall right in front of us. And this is like a walk-through space that's supposed to be open, but hey, the city hasn't cleared it out for a long time, and so we actually have like an Ailanthus tree. How tall would you say that is?
Couple
I'm
of
terrible
them.
at
I think it's 27 feet.
this. Thank you for the
Yeah.
the Forest Service
Believe it.
employee over here is
Yeah.
gonna nail it for us. But like a decent sized tree, like it's as tall as the house at least, maybe a little taller. And it was just like a little plant that came out of a crack. Also, is this sow thistle?
It's a thistle.
That's sow thistle.
Okay, I remember this from the Weed of Weeds website. It's got little yellow flowers, so it looks like, like a lot of things, it looks kind of like a little mini dandelion.
It'll hurt you.
Is it that spiky?
It's a little spiky.
Okay, it's a little spiky.
Lightly
Is that a
spiky.
bull thistle baby over there?
I think this might be a sow thistle baby.
We're in South Thistletown.
Yeah.
Okay.
Here's a hat. Oh.
It's a black hat sitting on the. Who's it from? It's a black polo hat sitting on the ground.
And a butterfly wing. Maybe? No. Fake butterfly wing. Here's a little urban wildlife for you guys.
Indeed. So we're looking at a kind of flat plant growing like sort of just, flat with kind of like round, kind of oval shaped leaves.
Kind of like a mutant.
It's cute. Those are his little flowers.
Maybe we'll find a better example.
Yeah.
Here's a
I'm
plantain.
gonna pocket that one.
Okay.
And we got a couple, and this is like, I kind of like this. This is a
Oh, we got
section
some
of
good stuff here.
of curb missing. Go ahead. What we got?
We got horsetail, which is, what is that really called?
Horseweed.
Horseweed.
Kanzuza.
It gets pretty tall, like,
It's pretty tall, like 4 feet.
and so it ends up with
3
these
feet 18. 3 feet.
precise. Come on. They end up with these like longish leaves arranged around, like in whorls around the stems.
It's a member of the aster family, so it looks like a little white daisy, but it was like a flat top splay of small daisy flowers, and yeah, long stemmy,
And we got
blooms in the fall, like many asters do.
what else we got? We got some more. We got some,
Plantain. Some babies.
Yeah, some
All
like
right.
broadleaf plantain
and
there.
so plantain has like these big round leaves with big parallel veins, at least the big ones.
And flower stalks that shoot straight up. These guys are edible too. The plantain seeds.
They are.
Yeah. And you can harvest them like really easily when they're ripe. You got like
Yeah.
tons of them. But they're edible in the way where you like watch some video on YouTube and this guy goes out with like his son and they get a bunch of these and they go to some cabin and then they like cook it and then they're like, oh, this is terrible.
If you're
You gotta,
starving.
like, you gotta like add butter or something if you're gonna eat this stuff. But I've heard about with people like popping them, like roasting them, toasting them.
So what are you looking at?
Just some Virginia pepperweed in my toe.
And what is Virginia pepperweed?
I
What does
don't
it
know
look like?
much.
It's a lepidium, and like all pepper, not like pepper like capsicum, but pepper like.
Like black pepper.
Like black pepper, yeah.
No, not really like black pepper. Black pepper is more like
But used
mustard,
like it, right?
Oh, okay. So
You
it's
know, like
little-
a mustard family thing.
Yeah.
But it's called pepperweed, but it's in the mustard
It
family.
looks kind of like a shepherd's purse.
It looks a lot like a shepherd's purse, except shepherd's purse kind of has a little heart-shaped seed pod, and this guy
Yeah.
just has a little round seed pod. It would have a 4-parted flower, 4 petals, and all the things in the mustard family are edible, although some are kind of too spicy or
Some
not.
taste better than others.
Yeah, some definitely taste better than others.
So, I don't know.
Let's get to the end of the block.
Look at the block. All right, this is what happens with plants. You always like stop it. All right. So, what are these grasses here?
Oh, they're grasses. No, it's not Timothy. It's like some foxtail type thing.
So we got little foxtails here and there. We're passing more sow thistle and more little ailanthus. And is this what is that?
This guy, I believe, is rattlesnake weed.
Is that the same as spotted spurge?
It's like, yeah, I mean, it's a spurge. It's a Euphorbiaceae. It's gonna have milky latex if you like break it. Which that wasn't a very good example because it's kind of like
This
dried
is like
out.
a reddish, another reddish,
you
well,
can
a
see
reddish
that.
plant that's another one of these flat
Creeping
plants.
growth form.
Creeping growth form. Yes, that was one of our old band name ideas.
Here's some spots on your spotted spurge.
And our spurges,
Oh yeah,
are those the same as
vetches.
No,
that's
vetch is
different.
vetch is a
What's
pea.
lady's thumb?
no?
Lady's thumb is
Oh, this is smartweed.
is a smartweed. Yeah.
Wait, that's a smartweed?
No, this
Okay.
is not a smartweed. This is
Got it.
this is
Poinsettia family.
yes.
There you go. Mm-hmm. Tony's got a horticulture degree. We're up surrounded by plant people.
Yeah, but I really
Alright.
just took a horse degree because I had a ceiling with birds, so.
Yeah, you got
That's
because you knew
weird.
too
It's
much
like
about
a,
birds.
Oh, that's
And I
like
know how
another
you go back to looks like an upright purslane.
mutant.
something.
Yeah,
Yeah.
And at
they're
that
all
point, I was
curled up
learning
on
about birds, so I
themselves.
thought
You
I'd
already
go
knew
school
enough
for
about birds.
horse.
Yeah.
You know,
Oh no, sorry.
and
What do you think this is?
Let's look at it.
It's like a
Let me
contorted,
get down here and check it out.
contorted
I think
purslane.
it's a contorted purslane. I
Okay.
concur.
It's doing tricks on
And if
us.
you look at the top of its leaves, it's got some sort of like fungal problem.
It's a very sick purslane. Okay, we'll leave it alone.
Sick puppy.
Hope you'll recover or not recover. Let nature take its course. What you got, Tony?
a beak brush. What is this? This is set. What is these?
This guy is
So
Yeah, I think it's a juncus, which would be a rush.
So it's got like, it looks kind of like a grass, but if it's a rush, it's not a grass.
So there's like sedges and rushes, which are close related to, or they are somewhat related to grasses.
So it's like rounder, I guess, than a grass.
And rushes are round, sedges have edges, and grasses have asses.
Okay,
Oh, that's the bull thistle. Right?
so we got a bull thistle.
A handsome one.
It is like what you classically think of when you think, or what I think of when you say thistle. This is like the thistle,
This is like Viking stopping thistle.
Viking stopping thistle.
You know the story behind that?
I don't, but it looks like it could stop
Why
a Viking.
it's the symbol for Scotland?
Because it stopped Vikings?
Because apparently the Vikings took off their shoes to sneak up on like the Scottish camp, and
They stepped on bull thistle?
it stepped on some kind of thistle,
Ooh.
and
And they were like, ah! And then they
woke up the Scots and they beat the Vikings.
This is a
Oh,
spiky
that's
plant.
cool.
And it's got kind of like, the flowers are these green spiky balls with like purple tufts on top.
Goldfishes love them.
Birds
Have
dig
you
'em.
guys eaten the thistle stems? You can find like nice thick thistles, and you can whack down, where it's nice and thick at the bottom, and peel back the skin off of it,
Yeah.
and
Peel
you're
it.
left with kind of like the pith of the stem.
Okay.
And it has like an artichoke type flavor.
I just got a mugwort tattoo, a mugwort inspired tattoo. Do you
Yeah,
think
that's-
it looks like that?
No, you mentioned it, yeah. Is that a picture we could put on the social media of your
Sure.
mugwort tattoo?
I got it like a day ago, so it could heal a little bit more. But yeah,
I think
you're
my cell
welcome
phone's
to-
inside, but I will grab that in a minute.
You have to credit the artist Brooke Hare. Got some curly dock.
Some curly dock with these big leaves, which is one of my least favorite plants in the
Really?
garden.
Because it's
To
so,
weed out?
Yeah.
You gotta dig out that root. It's vicious.
Edibles. Yeah, and you can eat the like young leaves. They're not that good though. It's like one of those
I
things.
feel like every
there's a bunch
plant,
of like
you could eat the shoots or the young leaves.
they're not that good.
And they're not
the,
that
but
good.
the plants where the
Or you have to
recipes
boil it
go,
2
boil
times.
it 3 or 4 times, like blanch it and then boil it and then boil it and then add butter. But you can't eat it.
It's like mush. It's like I can mush anything and mix it with butter after I boil it
Just
3
get
times.
some kale.
I know. So
Go
why
get
do you
some,
why do you like mugwort so much?
I think it was the first weed that I learned about when I moved to Philadelphia 8 years ago, and it's, it's supposed to have kind of magical qualities. You can sleep with it under your pillow and have
Smells
wild
nice.
dreams. It smells nice. I think it's beautiful.
It's everywhere.
It is everywhere, and it's it's resilient. It can be anywhere, and it can find a place anywhere.
It really can.
We really like that plant.
Is it a mulberry? What is it?
A paper mulberry.
Ah, okay.
Zaya and I became friends over a paper mulberry.
That's how we met.
Yeah.
What were you doing
Paper
with
mulberries.
the paper mulberry?
We weren't really doing anything, but I
Zaya-
was in Katie's
yeah.
presence because we had a mutual friend,
Yeah.
and
We
then
were in my backyard.
we were in your backyard.
And there was this mystery tree, which I thought of as the puzzle piece plant because
Yeah.
the leaves are kind of puzzle piece shaped. And Zaya identified it for me immediately, and we were friends forevermore. And went
Yeah,
on
Katie
to do
was like,
many
I've been like wanting so much to know what this plant is, and I was like, I can help you. And then she asked me like a lot more.
Is there a botanist in the audience?
Yeah.
Yes.
And then we spent the rest of the year like taking walks around Philadelphia. And
This is so lovely. All right.
Yeah.
And so we'll end on mugwort for this little walk. Let's head inside and we'll consume some mugwort, right?
Yeah, we're gonna
Oh.
have a drink with some mugwort in it.
Awesome.
Exotic, invasive.
This drink I learned how to make from Zaya, but it is a lemonade made from staghorn sumac fruits or seeds.
It's like the fruit.
Yeah.
Oh, berry things.
Yeah, so you take the whole kind of tuft and you just soak it in water. I used cold water. The drink probably would have been stronger but also more bitter if I had used hot water. Then I also added some mint, and that's it. That's the story.
It's absolutely delicious.
Look at this.
So yeah, so we were talking about how like there's a question like what do you focus on, like the native stuff that's somehow still there, or like the exotic stuff that's all around you. And you guys went like when you're with We the Weeds, it's like almost entirely exotic stuff that happens to be well suited to old field or recently disturbed fields and sidewalk cracks and.
Yeah, but it's not. It wasn't a decision upon that. It was just a decision to study what was present in our neighborhoods, which
Yeah. What were those neighborhoods?
Well, I live in Kensington, and Katie lives in West Philly. We did a lot of walking around in Kensington, I think more so than in West Philly, but, I mean, the weeds are similar in places, but we were really focusing on, like, these resilient plants that can grow in disturbed places with, like, high levels of salts or not that great of soils or lots of stormwater runoff. I mean, things that were growing in the city. And a lot of those do tend to be non-native plants.
Cool.
Yeah. The term that I really like, which is from that Peter Del Tredici book, is spontaneous urban plants. So any plant that's growing, unintentionally and able to thrive on its own. But yes, most of them do happen to be classified as invasive.
They're not from here.
Not from here.
Yeah.
But often we
Yeah.
were the ones who brought them over here.
Sure.
So to even focus on the fact that they're not from here is to ignore what brought them here to begin with.
This is something that I was thinking we'd get to later, but so it's a question that what is the what is the place? Is it like as sort of the coordinates here and what's native to here, or is it like the landscape?
I think it depends what your timeline is, but I think our focus is really what is here now, how did it get here? We are interested in what was here before, but I think the idea of trying to return a habitat to what was there before is a little bit not accounting for the changes that have taken place and maybe some positive benefits of those changes. So many of these plants that are classified as invasive or, doing remediation work or stabilizing soil or providing habitat or providing shade or absorbing water. So to spend so much money putting down poison or tearing them out, is that really always the right answer? I don't know.
Especially if you're in, this is the Pine Barrens. This ain't, this is
Right. You're in the city. And then I found a lot that people will be like, oh my gosh, you're a botanist. Tell me I love this plant that's in my backyard so much. Oh my gosh, I love it. And they love it. They just love it. And then you go out there and you tell them what it is. And then you mention that it's not from there. And that it's, and they hear the name of the plant. And they've heard this name of the plant before. And they know that plant's on the bad plant list. And then all of a sudden they're don't know what to do because they don't know if they should love that plant anymore. And it really doesn't make much of a difference. I mean, there's not any bad plants. And I think that with the weeds, I think of them as the human companion plants. And so a lot of what I see happening with the work I do in the Forest Service and people I talk to about invasive plants and this and that is that we're not equating for ourselves in the equation. So most invasive plants are reacting to habitat fragmentation or habitat disturbance, and they're not really just coming to get us in intact places. And so, I don't know, those friends, the plants that are the friends of the humans that have been hanging out with the humans seem to know how to deal with human-caused habitat disturbances because they've been hanging with us, and they're
native to our
and they're
habitats
hey,
anyway,
I'm totally into you guys, maybe you used to be into me, you took me with you when you traveled across the planet, or I kind of snuck along, and we used to have this thing going on, and now all of a sudden it's we're oh, our old best friend plant guys, we're
So dandelions must really hate us now by that thing.
No, I think they love us. I think that they still love us and that we still love them.
We keep trying to kill them.
People just kind of forgot how to, people forgot about it. The stories didn't get, we forgot. So I like them. I like those guys. I also like the native ones. I mean, I just like any plant that's just doing its thing.
So how did the project come about? How did you go from being just urban plant lovers to having a thing?
Well, we told a little bit about the story of meeting in my backyard and Zaya helping to identify the paper mulberry plant. And I think from there we got very excited. I think we were both looking at plants in different ways. I'm a visual artist, and I had been doing at that time a printmaking residency, and I was hoping to make botanical labels for the plants I was seeing around Philadelphia, but I was just having a really hard time identifying the plants. Zaya was already, doing this in her own way and doing much more. And so when we met, it was like a perfect opportunity to take walks, record what we were seeing, and then turn that information into these little visual placards, which we actually went around and like wheat pasted to buildings and cracks in the street where we would see the plants growing. And from there it kind of
Yeah,
took
with
off.
like this first idea of like, oh, what if we label them? Put labels out, just
Yeah.
put some labels out. Katie made these beautiful hand-printed labels. There was like a whole set of like 30 or something different plants or
More,
50
I
plants or
think,
something
yeah.
like that. She made these labels, and we were wheat pasting them around, and they really didn't last very long because it was wheat paste, but that was cool. That was part of the nature of it all. But we applied for Philly Steak to get, I don't know if you guys are familiar with that program, but it's like
A micro granting.
This is not a sandwich. This is
no, it's not like a Philly steak sandwich. It's like it's not a Philly cheesesteak. It's Philly steak, like stakeholder.
yeah.
And so people apply, and then they pick like 7 good ideas, and then there's a dinner, and everyone pays $20 to go to the dinner, and the dinner guests vote who should get the proceeds from the dinner. All the food's donated.
Okay.
And so like 200 people come, and they each pay $20, and so there's whatever. There's money.
Yeah.
So we applied for that, and we're finalists, but we didn't invite any of our friends to come, so we didn't win because you gotta have people to vote for you.
You didn't get the votes.
We didn't get the
It's
votes.
very Philly politics. that
But
way.
people did say, like, we met other people there, and people seemed really interested in it, and like, so the idea that people were interested in it, I think, sparked more projects.
Yeah, I don't even remember. I remember before that happening, people just wanting to take walks with us, and all of
Yeah.
a sudden, like, different institutions were asking us to lead these tours, and I think what people were responding to was not only just like the identification of the plants, but the stories that we were able to dig up, and just a way of getting to know the places that they pass through every day, but with this like added level of information.
Yeah. It's another layer of depth to the.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We did some work with some high school kids, and that was really awesome. Katie did a whole summer with them, where they made a field guide of the plants around their school.
Yeah, I think for me, like, a big part of the project is I grew up in New York City, which was a much more manicured place. There, real estate is so expensive. There are a lot fewer vacant lots, and it felt like an impressively urban environment. And when I moved to Philadelphia, I felt, I knew I was in an urban space, but I was also surrounded by what felt really like jungles.
Yeah.
But I didn't know what any of it was, and it was just so exciting to be in a city, but also in this like abundantly wild space.
Yeah.
And I just kept thinking, like, if I had been a kid growing up here, what would I have learned about any of this? Would I have been told, oh no, those are weeds, that's a vacant lot, don't go there, which
Yeah.
I think is what most kids are told. And so the idea of kind of being able to expose youth to, it's not just like a blighted area with weeds, it's like a whole ecosystem with these amazing plants, with these amazing stories. That's for me been one of the most exciting parts of the project. And students have responded amazingly. Like, kids that never looked twice at a patch of ground, like, instantly learned all the names of these plants. We run into them still, like, years later, and they remember and tell stories, and so it's been pretty exciting.
So keep looking at Tony, because now Tony recently just took over, what's the right way to put it? You were named the director.
I'm the site director of Cops Creek Environmental Center.
Cool.
So I would love to collaborate with you.
Yeah. I think another really cool thing, like, I never met a botanist in my life until I met Zaya, and, the idea that there is this career as a botanist and you can go out and look for plants and make a living, and like, that was so exciting to me. And I think especially when we've gotten to work with like young women, to see to see a woman in science and to actually learn about what they get to do. I mean, Zaya's come in with like all of her tools, and it's just such an eye-opening, amazing
And Zaya,
thing.
what do you do for a living?
Yeah, what
I
do you
work
do?
for the Forest Service as a field botanist, and I've been doing it for a while now. It's like been 14 years or something. And I work for a group within the Forest Service called Enterprise. And we have somewhat like a private consulting company within the Forest Service. So we're kind of filling in the shortcomings where different national forest systems wouldn't have staff on hand. I work as a field botanist. There's a lot of different people I work with. There's different biologists I work with, and hydrologists, archaeologists, and then we also have people that are doing writing, editing, and more administrative type stuff, environmental documents, and so there's kind of this whole gamut of everything within the Forest Service, and we have a few of those people, and then we go and kind of farm ourselves out and help out. So
She gets to ride a government truck, and she gets shipped to like the most beautiful place in
gonna
the
say,
country.
yeah.
so I travel.
So you go from like the great outdoors to Kensington. And so just for perspective for people who aren't familiar with Philadelphia neighborhoods, Kensington is a very densely like built up old like row house neighborhood.
Kensington, when I moved to Kensington, has changed a lot. When I moved to Kensington, there were 17 houses on my block where there probably originally were like 45 houses. So there was over half vacant lots on just my block.
Yeah.
The next block over was completely vacant. The next block over only had like 3 or 4 buildings on it out of the 90 that used to be there.
Yeah.
So it was, and then a couple blocks farther, they call it the mega lots. So it was like complete blocks that used to be factory buildings that had burnt down. It's an old textile
This is by the L.
neighborhood. Hmm.
I know what you're talking about. You said megawatt. I was like, oh.
Yeah. It's an
Emerald Street.
old textile neighborhood, and so the big like ribbon factories and hosiery factories and stuff like that have been slowly burning down, leaving these big lots. And then I lived in a house that was like the foreman's house or whatever, so it was kind of a nicer house. But then there's a lot of blocks that have kind of smaller row homes, all kind of tightly packed in there, smaller row homes. Plenty of weeds.
Plenty of mugwort.
Tons of mugwort. There was a fire. The Bucks building burnt down some years ago, and I've been watching that, and it was really interesting to see the succession of the weeds that were growing in there. Like the very first year, I wrote it down somewhere. The very first year, it was like what was it? I think it was all yellow sweet clover.
You
Just
were
like,
gonna say that.
like the entire
I just watched some field too.
yeah, the entire block was mellow sweet clover, and then, the next year it was like a completely different plant community, and I was like, oh my god, I'm gonna spend my life studying this lot. and then,
I feel that
but
way
then I
about-
got like distracted.
on
forgot to.
Walnut and 48th, that apartment building that burned down over there. I haven't paid attention from its initial burning down, which was an awful thing. A lot of people lost their homes. It was miserable. But then they cleared the lot, and now it's like a field that they mow like every 3 months or something like that.
Right.
So it's kind of neat to see what can make it and flower in the time before they come back and mow it again. And right now, Zaya is mixing up some cocktails. What are we drinking?
Okay, so this drink is it's an oldie but a goodie. Katie and I actually whipped this up for an event that happened a while ago, but I had it in my storage unit here because I'm not around. But so this is utopic dystopic bitters that are made from plants that were growing along the Schuylkill River, along with other herbs and things like that were
The
purchased.
Schuylkill River is one of our 2 major rivers. It's a tributary of the Delaware that flows and cuts off. It's the boundary between West Philadelphia and the rest of Philadelphia.
And so it's an absinthe-inspired drink. Absinthe is made with wormwood. But this drink has 4 plants that are also commonly known as wormwood. And I have a little pamphlet that we made for our event before. So we have common ragweed, which is Ambrosia artemisiafolia, which is known as Roman wormwood. So that's growing around. It is responsible for some allergies. The pollen is, but The plant itself can act as an antihistamine, so you can use ragweed as a antidote to ragweed allergies, hay fevers. Then we have mugwort, which is also known as common wormwood, Artemisia vulgaris.
Yep.
And that plant is a plant that people have used to connect to the ethers and spiritual world in a lot of ways. It's very, very prolific. And then we have Sweet Annie, which is Artemisia annua, which is actually a really common plant that I feel like people aren't that aware of that are here. But
May I see the pamphlet?
you may.
Do you have an
wait, hold on,
electronic version of the pamphlet?
This is called
I can send you one.
sweet wormwood. And Artemisia annua is an annual version of mugwort. And it is a plant that people use to treat malaria. Artemisian is like a drug, a malarial drug in
I have heard of that.
many
yeah.
places. And
Neat.
and Sweet Annie is a like hardcore anti-malarial. So you got your antihistamine, you got your heaven connection to heaven, you got your anti-malarial, and then we put some actual wormwood in it too. So you've had these 4 wormwoods in this drink, 3 of which were collected by the Schuylkill River, and then it has some classic absinthe herbs like fennel and
Yeah.
star anise and things like that in there. And it's served. This drink is served over a sugar cube because that's what I think of when I think of absinthe.
Yeah, trickled over a
Yeah,
spoon and
with,
over a sugar cube.
with a
Yeah.
orange slice and some vodka.
Yeah.
And we originally served this drink aboard the Wetland vessel, which is a rehabbed boat created by the artist Mary Mattingly. It's currently being housed down at Bartram's Gardens as part of a Penn Environmental Initiative through
Okay.
Bethany Wiggin. So those are all really great people doing interesting things.
Cool.
Yeah.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
So
So
we served
right.
some drinks. with
And so
them.
we were thinking that, you know, in the utopic, dystopic future, when all the humans were gone, these plants would be like growing in all of our tracks. But if you were one of the humans that happened to make it, you could use these plants to like survive in this. So it's the utopic, dystopic.
So do you guys have any new or any upcoming events or new
We did all
media
sorts of-
stuff?
We've changed our tune a little.
Well, we recently started doing projects outside of Philadelphia. So our first was a really wonderful experience at an artist residency called Cabin Time. It's a roving residency that takes artists, musicians, writers, scientists, and brings everyone to a different remote location every year and gives people the opportunity to create work over the course of a week. And so Zaya and I had the opportunity to go out to the Sierra Nevadas. We were in the Lone Pine region.
At the base of Mount Whitney.
Yeah, Whitney Portal. And we did a project exploring grief in nature and how, if and how there is some kind of equivalent to this human concept of grief in the landscape. So, you know, can you look at geology or geography even?
Yeah,
and
watersheds and
kind of read traumatic events that have been somehow like
yes, time came
turned
up.
into
Time came up
landscape.
a lot in terms of how grief and we kind of thought how grief and landscape might translate is a part of landscape that hasn't reacted to time in the same way that other things have. So you have the mudslide or the avalanche, and where everything else is worn away slowly. That had been like a drastic thing where you're seeing time frames differently. See, it kind of ended up coming back to time. It was an explorative.
yeah, we
thing.
did a lot of like messing around in the desert with
Yeah.
materials and making sundials and candles and
Yeah,
it was a good time. So we will hopefully be having a show of that work at Sierra Nevada College in October.
Oh, good. Congratulations. Yeah.
And then Zaya has been working on this project at the Huntington.
which is a We the Weeds tangent project. Katie's going to come out and help me with it, and has been instrumental in thoughts and ideas. So I was kind of explaining it. I'm just going to say it briefly.
Because we weren't recording at that point. So
which is a project at the Huntington Botanical Gardens and Library looking
in
at
Los Angeles.
Looking at how collections, specifically biological collections and collectors, have influence on biodiversity in the past, present, and future, and conservation. I mean, that would be the future part. And both negative and positive impacts on biodiversity.
And you were citing the example of about how explorers like have taken succulents from all over the world, and then how aloe vera in particular.
Aloe. So there's several hundred species, or maybe at least 100 species of aloe, and all but one are prohibited for transport under CITES.
So they're endangered, basically.
They're all endangered. They're, and
CITES.
Yeah, so CITES is the
Convention on International Trade in Endangered Species.
There we go. And so most of these things can't cross borders anymore. So back in the day, you'd have like some guy like Mr. Huntington who was extremely wealthy, and he's like, oh, I'm interested in plants, I want a collection. He'd send out expeditions, and people would go to foreign countries and they would just grab stuff. They would say, oh my gosh, that's beautiful, I want that. I know I can trade it in markets, I can bring it to the nursery, whatever. Particularly with like cactuses and succulents where they don't really have as much medicinal value or fiber values or things like that. They were really ornamental. So you're having people bring all these plants, and that was detrimental to native plant populations. And now it's illegal to do that. So people are still doing it, of course, but it is illegal to move those materials around. So like every species of aloe except for aloe vera is protected by CITES. Yet at Huntington, they have a couple hundred of these species, which they got prior to the CITES convention. So they got it in early, and now because of development and other things in the place of origin, those plants a lot of times don't even exist where they came from. But the Huntington kept incredible records of where they got these things from, and so they have original collections from these places, and they may or may not exist in those places, and the Huntington's actually kind of working at wanting to put them back there. They're doing
like reintroductions.
Cryopreservation to preserve things for hundreds of years to the future, and wanting to reintroduce things from the same native stock back to the place that they were. And so it's really an interesting kind of turnaround from like a colonial perspective of like, we could never tame nature, we could never take it all, it's just ours it's the bounty, to where we've changed our ways in thinking about who should move plants around and where they should be moved to, and animals and all these things.
To what purpose?
And to what purpose. And then you have this kind of like collection that I don't know if it was the forethought of the collector to have it, that collection for preservation in the future. I think it was more like to collect, but how that can be used. And then you wander around Los Angeles because you're a weeds person, and you like can't help it, and you're like, oh my god, what's it? Oh, what is all this stuff? You know what is hanging out in Los Angeles?
Fruit
is Tree of Heaven.
Atlantis.
It's all over the place.
All right, you can't get away from it. All right.
Yeah. And then there's just fruit to be eaten. Yeah. I can't get anywhere in Los Angeles because I'm like, but someone's got to pick all these guavas. Like, there's just guavas all over the place. Like, someone, like, come on, really? Like, it's just, but I can't, I was going to go somewhere, but now I have to, like,
harvest guavas.
Now I'm on my way to this party, and, like, I'm showing up with, like, shopping bags full of guavas, and, like, I'm like, just want
pretty popular lady then.
And they're like,
everybody else
brought
chips, and you got guavas. Thank you for listening to another episode of the Urban Wildlife Podcast. If you like the podcast, please leave us a rating and a review on iTunes or Stitcher or Google Play, whatever you like to listen to your podcasts on. With any ideas you got, please get in touch with us at urbanwildlifecast@gmail.com. You can tweet at us at UrbWildlifeCast. We want to thank very much again Katie and Zaya for coming, not just for the weed walk and for talking about their project, We the Weeds, and all its ancillary projects, its offshoots, as you will, and also serving us invasive species like soft drink and cocktails. Do you want to say anything about Lola? Or not on the podcast?
Who knows? My cat is obviously on her way out. So
Yeah, we've talked about Lola on previous podcasts.
Yeah.
This is worth mentioning. This,
I mean, I haven't had her that long, but I inherited her when she was 11. Now she's 15, and so she's like I'm not even sure she'll be awake. She'll be alive tomorrow at this point.
Sorry
But
to
it's,
hear
yeah.
appreciate it. But yeah,
It's always been a
you
little
kind of knew
quiet
it's
than
coming.
usual.
But
Yeah.
it's crazy because I just moved in with my girlfriend, and her cat died like a few days before we started moving, and so it's like crazy.
I have a 20-year-old cat you can have if you're in the market.
You guys are gonna edit this a little bit, right?
Oh yeah.
It's not like everything I say is gonna be. Is this when I make my big break?